One of the words that came out of our mouths more often than any other the past year and a half or so is the word essential. We talked about essential services and essential workers all the time. We learned that it wasn't essential to have a venture capitalist in your life or to be able to see an NBA player. What was essential was grocery store workers and the people who make sure that when you turn on the tap, water flows out. A lot of us struggled in big and in small ways during this season of COVID, but there were some people who had a special advantage. They had a kind of superpower that others did not have. And when they had that and displayed it, they were able to get through what other people found so difficult. The superpower was people who were able to live with less than other people need. Anyone who was able to live with less found themselves in a unique position of advantage over the past year and a half. Many of you will remember Mary Tiberia. Her brother Eugene's here today. She was a tremendous member of our community. Folks know her in both parishes because she was also for many years a server at the Quarry restaurant, as was her sister Amy. I loved Mary, and I only knew her for 2 weeks. I arrived at the beginning of November as the new pastor here, and she died on Thanksgiving Day. I only got to spend 2 weeks with her. But because it was such a sacred time in her life journey, they were really special weeks. And one day when I was visiting her in the hospital, she said, "You know, one of the greatest gifts that God has ever given me is that I am satisfied with very little." She said, I don't need to travel. I don't get my kicks from buying things. She said, I like Ravenna, and I like my friends and my family here. I don't need anything more than that. And then she looked straight at me and she really emphasized it. She said, that's a gift, you know. That's a great gift. That was her superpower. What we hear in the gospel today is Jesus saying, I am going to send you out with only the essentials that you need. I'm going to give you what is essential and nothing more. So he said, here are the things that are essential. You're going to go out there with me and with each other. End of list. You're going to have me and you're going to have each other. But that's it. At the parish I grew up in Rochester, there was a relationship we had with a sister parish in Haiti. And occasionally, groups of parishioners would go down for a week or more and live with host families in our sister parish and do service work. And one of those trips, they brought some teenagers along, and one of them was a kid named Matt. And they had had many meetings about how to prepare for this trip and what to bring along with you. And when they got to the airport that day, everyone had their rolling luggage and all their things, but not Matt. He just had a backpack. And the chaperones were furious. Where's your gauze? Where's your hydrogen peroxide? Where's your extra pairs of this and that? Where's your mosquito net? And he said, I've got everything I need, the way a teenager might. They were steaming. But he did fine, actually. He just rinsed his things out at night and hung them to dry, and then he wore them the next day. And it wasn't until they got home and were looking through the pictures that they saw the miracle. They took a picture with every host family they stayed with. So there's all these pictures of the groups and the host families on the day that they'd be leaving to go to the next part of the parish. And in the pictures, everyone's smiling. And everyone is trying to reach out to touch someone there to show the connection that they had. But only Matt had his arms around both people because he had his backpack on. Everyone else had one hand on their luggage. Jesus knows what he's talking about. I'm not going to send you out there with luggage. It's going to ruin the experience. I want you to go with just me and with each other and the trust that you have in me. Ernest Hemingway once said, the best way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust them. That's how you find out. And Jesus is inviting us, trust me, and you won't be sorry. In 2012, Oakland, California got a new bishop, and he was someone that was well known in Boston, where I was living for 10 years. A lot of my friends who went to the other seminary in Boston than I did had him as a professor. And when he went out all the way across the country to become the Bishop of Oakland, they asked him what his plan was for being the bishop. How are you going to approach this big challenge? And he said, my plan is that I will take care of the priests, and the priests will take care of the people, and all together we'll take care of the poor. I'll take care of the priests, make sure they're okay. The priests will take care of the people, make sure they're okay. And together, we will take care of the poor. That's what Jesus is saying today. I'll take care of you. You're in charge of the buddy I give you. And together, let's change the world. Let's make the world a more beautiful place, the way God would have it. Father Dan Quinn was ordained a year before me, and so we were buddies in the process of becoming priests. He is now the pastor of Blessed Sacrament Church in Albany, the big stone church on Central Avenue. But he used to be the pastor of one of the tiniest parishes in our diocese that is the farthest away. It's in Hancock on the Pennsylvania border, way out there. And it's a very small little community. When I went to visit him at his rectory one time, I was impressed with a plaque he had on the wall that said, the will of God will never take you where the grace of God will not sustain you. God's will never take you where God's grace will not sustain you. And I was impressed with it at the time, but it means even more to me now when a year ago he was asked to leave his tiny country parish out there in the sticks and come to one of the biggest parishes in one of the most densely populated streets in our diocese. Do you believe what that plaque says? That God's will never take you beyond where God's grace will keep you buoyed up? That's the test. That's the test. Because all those folks in Cooksaki who are out there with chainsaws, I heard a lot of them this morning. There's a lot of chainsaw noise in Cooksaki this morning. Do they feel for sure that whatever happens in the next storm, God will be able to give them the grace to get through it? Do I believe that as I prepare for this fall, a new assignment that I didn't see coming? Do I believe that God's grace will support me no matter where God's will takes me? One of the things that we have to digest as we go through the spiritual life is to realize that you can never outdo God. You can try all you want, but you're never going to outdo God. And in fact, that becomes a real freeing test you can take. I realized this with tipping a few years ago. You can tip extravagantly. When they flip that little screen over, go ahead and say 25%. Boop. You know why? Because it will come back to you over and over and over in ways that you can't even measure. When I decided to start being a more generous tipper, I couldn't believe how many blessings were coming into my life. Because you can't outdo God. It's why with God, you never need to get the supplemental insurance for anything. You don't need the insurance. As long as you're with God, God is the insurance. Because you can't outdo God. There is a person in the lineup to become a saint. Her name is Blessed Mary Elizabeth Hesselblad. And she said something that I think makes her great saint material. She said her prayer always to God was, God, I am going to make a decision to trust you and to prove to you that I am. Wherever you lead me, I'm going to go with my eyes closed. I'm going to go with my eyes closed, and I'm going to ask you to lead me by the hand. The best way to know if you can trust someone is to trust them. And who is more worthy of our trust than God? So this week we're being asked to consider, what is God asking me to do now? What risk is God asking me to take? What challenge am I being asked to confront head on with only God and the people God gave me? Jesus says, I'm only sending you with what's essential, me and each other. So let's take that big risk. Let's go with our eyes closed. Let's see how much we can do without and focus on what's essential. Because as that woman with that great superpower told me 6 years ago, that's a great gift, you know. That's a tremendous gift.